thank you for that introduction. So as you can probably tell, my background really originally was in geopolitics, but it's transformed into one that's now kind of trying to understand what's happening to our world with the seismic developments that are happening with AI. So today, I'm going to be speaking about something that is so profoundly pertinent, because we are on the cusp of an AI-led paradigm change that's going to change the way we think. And it starts with one word, deep fake. Now, this is a relatively clued up audience. I'm assuming that many of you have already heard the word. But for those of you who haven't, a deep fake is essentially a piece of synthetic or fake media that's either been manipulated by or entirely generated by artificial intelligence, so created by AI. And it can come in any digital format, right? Video, images, text, and audio. And this really astonishing ability of AI to actually create content that never existed before, is nascent. I first started tracking it at the very beginning, around 2016, 2017. And now, in the last year, as I'll cover in my talk, it's just been accelerating at an exponential rate. But anyway, it turns out that what AI is particularly good at is at creating fake media of people. So just to give you an example of that, I'm going to show you three pictures. And then by show of hands, I'll ask you which is the person you think doesn't exist, okay? Which is the person created by AI? Is it A, this child, B, the woman, or C, the man, okay? So by show of hands, who thinks the child is the person who doesn't exist? Who thinks the woman is the person that doesn't exist? Okay, who thinks the man is the person that doesn't exist? Okay, so I think it's about equal. It's about a third for each image. So if you chose the child, A, you're correct. If you chose the woman, B, you're correct. Hey, so I think you see where I'm going with this. If you chose the man, C, you are correct too, because it was a trick question. None of these are real people. These are all images generated by artificial intelligence. So AI can not only be trained to generate people who don't exist, it can also be trained to clone people who do exist, even if that person is already dead. Take the surreal artist, Salvador Dali. He's been dead for over 30 years, but there's something he wants to share at Wired Smarter today.
But there is one thing that makes me different. I do not believe in my death. Do you?
So obviously, that's an entirely synthetic creation. Dali never filmed that video. It was created with the consent of his estate and created with the help of AI for an exhibit in the Dali Museum in Florida. But, you know, I doubt the artist could have even predicted just how surreal the future would become. Now, if I hadn't primed you, and you guys are probably a bit more digitally literate than the average consumer, but if I hadn't primed you and told you that the Dali video was fake or that those were images of people who don't exist and you encountered them in the wild, could you have believed, or without context, could you have believed that they were real or that they were authentic? And of course, the answer is that for the average person, yes, they could believe that, because we are primed as humans to want to believe something that looks and sounds right. It's a cognitive bias known as processing fluency. So any kind of visual manipulation or media manipulation or content manipulation has a very prolific history as a phenomenally powerful way of shaping the collective human imagination and perception. And of course, this precedes any kind of digital content. Here is a keen proponent of the medium of content manipulation, even before it went digital, the Soviet dictator, this chap here, Joseph Stalin, who, as he had his enemies annihilated in his brutal Great Purges of the 1930s, he simultaneously had them unpersoned in photographs. So literally removed from the historic record by having them removed from photographs. Now, to do this in the mid-20th century was a really difficult, burdensome task. It required master artisans days, weeks, months to laboriously kind of go over these photographs to achieve this unpersoning effect. And Stalin was so brutal, in his purges that business was thriving. An entire kind of cottage industry dedicated to unpersoning existed under his regime. But of course, since then, what's happened is that technology, especially digital technology, has consistently made the manipulation of content, digital content, more sophisticated, easier, and more accessible. So it's been democratized. Just as the Soviet Union was collapsing, in 1990 came the first widespread photo editing software, Photoshop, something that even now, 30 years later after its release, when people engage with content that's been edited by Photoshop, for instance, on the front cover of a magazine, people still think that that may be an authentic depiction. But now, content manipulation has become even more ubiquitous. And as a matter of fact, billions of us do it every single day through things like Instagram filters, TikTok. So we're all starting to become media producers or manipulators. So I really want to reiterate why, however, synthetic media or AI-generated content is not just a souped-up version of Photoshop. This isn't just an innovation on the kind of content or media manipulation tools that we've seen over the past few years. First reason is because synthetic media or AI-generated content, fidelity-wise, is going to be absolutely perfect. To the human eye, it's already impossible to distinguish between synthetic and authentic content. And there's an interesting debate going on within the AI research community now as to whether it'll ever be possible to build an AI detector that can detect all the synthetic content. And the jury's out, but the early results is not looking good, that even kind of AI won't be able to detect synthetic content. The second, of course, is that just the idea that we are getting to that stage where AI can generate any kind of digital content is a huge concept to wrap our head around, right? The stuff that billions of us interact with on a daily basis, whether it's text in the form of an article, images, audio, video, all of that, the kind of lifeblood of the information sustaining the world can now be made by AI. It will be automated because once you train an AI to generate something, it can do so without the need for a human to intervene. So I showed you the faces of the people that don't exist. That was an AI model that was trained to generate human faces, and now it can do that perfectly every time you kind of refresh, for instance, the page where you can see this AI model, this person does not exist.com, you get a new face of a new person that doesn't exist. No human required. And of course, it will be absolutely ubiquitous and universal. As this technology is democratizing and computing power becomes more powerful, the ability to synthesize media or to create AI-generated content is going to become available on a smartphone. As a matter of fact, there are already early apps that allow this. So it is an age where AI is going to be able to autonomously generate all forms of digital content. Now I want to show you, I spoke about how quickly this space is evolving, and the early examples I showed you of this person doesn't exist, and the DALL-E video, those are quite a few years old. But this year, we have been seeing some really amazing breakthroughs in this space. So enter DALL-E. It is a generative model that was, the DALL-E 2, the latest edition, was only released in March this year. And what DALL-E can do, right, is not just creating something on a specific ask, like generate a face of a human. It can create images or art of anything just based on a textual prompt, no matter how crazy or absurd that prompt is. So let's see what DALL-E did when it was prompted with this: a bowl of soup that looks like a monster knitted out of wool. Okay. So I didn't know what that might look like, but that's a pretty good depiction. Multiple different soup monsters. So remember, this is multiple interpretations of one textual prompt. No human was involved in the creation of these images that did not exist before AI generated them. As you can imagine, when OpenAI unveiled DALL-E to the world, they said that they're keeping it strictly on rails, right? They're making sure that access to this model is controlled, because as you can imagine, if you have an AI that can generate pictures of anything based on a mere textual prompt, it's not just going to be fuzzy soup monsters, right, that are going to come out of it. So we're thinking, wow, this is amazing. OpenAI's, I think, feeling quite proud of the fact that they've achieved this breakthrough and are thinking that they're way ahead in this space, and that they can probably monetize this model and strictly guard access to it. Well, they were wrong, because only 2 months ago, a British AI company called Stability AI, actually I think they call themselves the real OpenAI, because they're ideologically of the view that the advances in AI, and in this case generative AI, should be open to everyone. They released their text-to-image generation model, Stable Diffusion, and they released it open source. Arguably, its outputs are even better than DALL-E's. So let's see what it came up with this prompt. Ultra-realistic Native American old woman portrait, cinematic lighting, award-winning photo, no color, 80mm lens. If you are a nerd on generative AI or have been following some of the new companies that are emerging in this ecosystem like Midjourney, you will see how the internet is going absolutely crazy as Stable Diffusion is being integrated into everything. So this happened in August, and we're thinking, wow, surely it's not going to get any better than this for a while, right? And I don't even have it in my deck, because it's so recent. But about 2 weeks ago, Facebook released its first text-to-video generator. This is, you type in a text prompt, and AI generates a video of that. The outputs are like, it's astounding, but the outputs still kind of look like an animated GIF, right? So you're not making like a feature-length movie by just typing in text. But a week after that, so last week, came out Google's text-to-video generator. And that can already do about 2 minutes of video. So you really are looking at a world within the next 5 years where you can actually generate feature-length films just by typing text into your AI model. So this is utterly mind-blowing. And it's emerging, of course, at a time, generative AI is emerging at a time when digital content has become the most important medium of human communication. So just think about this. Last year, collectively, we, humanity, took 1.7 trillion photographs. Now, if I were to take a photo every second, I think I could get to 1 billion photos in about 30,000 years. But if I wanted to take 1.7 trillion photographs, I'd have to be taking a photo every second for over 50,000 years to at that number. 82% of internet traffic this year has been driven by video, downloads, and streaming. Of those of us who are online, which is already soon going to be almost all of humanity, but not quite yet there. But of those of us who are online, video is already the primary source of information for almost 70%. And this stat, I mean, it just absolutely blew my mind. But 6.6 billion people in the world, that's 84% of humanity, now owns a smartphone. Pretty shocking when you consider that the iPhone only came out 15 years ago. So all of us are going to become consumers of AI-generated content, but also producers of AI-generated content. There's going to be an explosion in the creator economy. Currently, the creator economy is about 50 million people, but in the next decade, this is going to grow to billions as AI democratizes the ability to create content. So we're utterly primed to be disrupted by AI, but just how quickly do you think this will happen? Well, when I wrote my book in 2020 and I interviewed lots of independent experts, they came up with this stat. 90% of video content online will be synthetically generated. Now, other experts disagree, and especially if you consider what's been coming out in the last 6 months, because they think we're actually going to hit that number by about 2025. And I have to say that I'm not inclined to disagree. So by 2030, we're looking at an entirely new digital paradigm where a single creator, right, a TikToker, a YouTuber, the proverbial teenager in his basement, can make the level of content that is only accessible to a Hollywood studio today, right, an ultra-resourced actor. You're going to see a widespread commodification, explosion of AI-generated content creation tools, companies. I mean, the amount of money and interest that's being poured into this space is astounding. The whole ecosystem with startups and companies has just been exploding. And a lot of the kind of Silicon Valley venture firms are convinced that this is going to be the birthplace of the next trillion-dollar company. And finally, of course, is that synthetic media production or AI-generated content production is going to go off the rails, right? There's no way you can control this. There are going to be so many legitimate applications that are going to change everything. But of course, this is also a technology that will be weaponized. So the future is synthetic. And when you talk about the legitimate use cases of AI-generated content, we're already starting to see so many interesting use cases. And here is one that I'd like to show you. Messy messages. You take the footballing legend, Lionel Messi. This was a campaign that was created by UEFA and Lay's. And essentially, Messi allowed himself to be cloned by AI in order to send basically personalized messages to fans. Like, to do this, all it required was a few clicks of a button on a website, and you could create your personal content from Messi. So let's watch.
Hey guys, what's up? My friend has invited us to watch the game at their place. I hope I can make it. If I can't be there, enjoy the game. Ah, and don't forget to bring the snacks. Ciao.
So, I mean, I'm a long-suffering football wife, but I understand the passion runs deep. So you can see why this is so compelling, right? When I showed it to my husband, he's like, wow, this is crazy. It looks like you're getting a personal message from Lionel Messi speaking down the barrel of his phone, and it's just for you. This is a very, very early example of another huge trend I think is going to happen, and that is that we're going to see the emergence of audiences of one, meaning that all digital content is going to be bespoke and individualized just for you, because AI will allow that to be possible, scalable, and achievable, I would say, probably within the next 5 to 7 years. So it's all really, really, really exciting. But this is, of course, the security thread, and my own kind of background starts with disinformation and information warfare before it moved more to kind of the creative opportunities in this area. But I think you can all understand that there is absolutely no way this technology won't be weaponized. Which brings me to rule number 34. And it is a meme about the nature of the internet. And it has it's a list of rules. And rule number 34 states if it exists online, then there is porn of it, no exceptions. And that's absolutely true of AI-generated content. As a matter of fact, I first came to this area back in 2016, 2017, when, guess what? It was emerging on Reddit in the form of non-consensual pornography. Now, a few years down the line, and deepfake porn or AI-assisted fake porn is a serious problem. There's an entire ecosystem online, and it's incredibly gendered, right? It's just women who are targets or victims of the fake porn. Sorry, guys, apparently nobody wants to see AI-generated porn of women, of men, But it is a harbinger. This is not just a tawdry woman's issue, right? It is a harbinger of the fact that identities, personas, your very being can now easily be cloned by AI. So if you want to talk about security implications, this is a very potent new threat. The fact that all that's needed is a little bit of training data, which can probably be scraped from your social media. I mean, who doesn't have some kind of digital presence online? And the amount of training data that AI needs to clone you is becoming less and less. So already, I can probably synthesize your voice if I have access to 5 seconds of you speaking. I can synthesize you in a video by just going on your LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook and getting some video content of you from there. So how do we navigate the era of generative AI? We absolutely, like I said, and I think when I started the talk, it's absolutely going to change everything, every industry, the fact that all digital content is going to be made by AI. But we have to build some safety rails into the evolving internet, because otherwise we face an information ecosystem or a digital ecosystem where we absolutely cannot distinguish between what's synthetic, what's authentic, and even more, every single person is now a potential target for fraudsters in a way that just wasn't possible before. So we have to adopt an approach known as media provenance and authenticity. So rather than trying to detect everything that's fake or generated by AI, because that will be an utterly impossible task, and so much of it is going to be benign, it's not going to be malicious content, we take the opposite approach in the sense that we authenticate what's real. So if you are taking a photo or a video, let's say you're a journalist, there's already the software and hardware out there so that you can cryptographically seal in the metadata of that media file that this is an authentic recording, right? So that needs to become widespread. But more than just authentication at capture, we also need to adopt universal standards for media provenance. So this means that all content, whether it's synthetic or authentic, needs to come with a chain of lineage showing where has it been created, what's the training data, who's edited it, who does it belong to. Only by adopting this approach of basically full transparency will it be possible for the kind of era of generative AI not to descend into an utterly dystopian future where we absolutely don't know what it is that we're engaging with or who we even are. So I just want to end with a final point. I know I've gone over my time. But that is that we are facing, I mean, in the age of AI, we are, in our lifetime, we are facing more tech-led change, exponential change, more change, transformation, disruption than the entirety of humanity has experienced before us. So what we see in the age of AI, and generative AI is just one example of that, I think, is that we are hitting a tipping point. The technology is no longer an innovation which can be integrated into existing society, but it's changing the framework of society itself. And at its heart lies a really ancient philosophical question, and that is, what is the nature of reality, and how is AI going to shape it? And I think that is going to be the question of our lifetime. So, thank you.